The White Witch podcast with me, Carly. Hope you are all well, witches. On today's episode, we're going to be talking all about mirrors as portals. But before we get into that, this is the week where I thought the high-pitched hounds of hell were outside my window at 3 a.m, when in fact it was a shrew or a vole being yeeted up into the sky in the mouth of a buzzard or an owl or something as I lay in the dark, wondering if my time upon this earth was nigh. Absolutely terrifying. I'm still shedding my towny skin. When we first moved to the countryside, my daughter asked me, "What do badgers eat?" And I realised I have no idea whatsoever. Tried to style it out, but in my mind thought, I need to ramp up my education in relation to the countryside, which in all fairness, I have been doing wholeheartedly. Just hadn't got to the diet of a badger. So I had this book on my Goodreads list for a little while, and the local library did not disappoint because there was a copy in the local area's circulation that I could borrow. That book is Meadowland, The Private Life of an English Field, written by John Lewis Stemple. Here is the book's blurb. To stand alone in a field in England and listen to the morning chorus of the birds is to remember why life is precious. In exquisite prose, John Lewis Stemple records the passing seasons in an ancient meadow on his farm. His unique and intimate account of the birth, life and death of the flora and fauna, from the pair of ravens who have lived there longer than he has to the minutiae underfoot, is threaded throughout with the history of the field and recalls the literature of other observers of our natural history in a remarkable piece of writing that follows the tradition of Jeffreys, Mabie and Deakin. I loved this book in parts, felt confused in others. Overall, it was well worth the read for me. I do think it is a Marmite book, not for everyone. I will explain why. Things I loved were how much I learned. First thing I uncovered to answer the badger question was that badgers are known for eating hedgehogs from the inside out and discarding their spiny coats, but they do eat other things such as earthworms. Question answered successfully, but I just discovered so much. Particular interests were the account of wassailing and its tradition, history in relation to how the land was broken up into fields, some insight into when the lands were worked by most folk in the countryside. For example, fields were given a name so Doris, your better half, could locate you, bring your sandwiches down for you. There is reference to a few of the Sabbaths us witches honour, which makes sense due to the connection to the land. But overall, I liked the particularly grim discoveries about nature, descriptions of different species he comes across in the field across the year, with some amazing facts alongside too. I was stunned to learn that some queen flying ants can live up to or even longer than 20 years. Who knew? Also, the fact that mammal predators rarely will eat a shrew because they have these glands on their flanks that produce this disgusting odour. And also the fact that moles are supposed to have these little death chambers in their holes that they dig. And basically they find worms, bite their heads off, and this sort of poison goes into them, makes them like zombies. So they are alive, like sort of, just waiting to be the mole's next meal. And they could be there for ages. What little psychos the moles are. The only issue I had with this book, not issue so much, I sometimes find it difficult to understand what some of the flowers or fauna were, because he uses a lot of country names that are quite regional. I was okay with that. I could look into that, but it just made it like sometimes I had to reread a few bits, look some bits up, but it did keep to the narrative of the ancient meadowland, its history, customs of old farming, and so on. My main bugbear with this book was he was so sweet when it went to measures to save animals. For example, some baby shrews are disturbed when he is scything the meadow. He makes sure to cover them up, put them out of harm. Then he sets boundaries for nests so they won't be disturbed, and he gives them space. He's often trying to save some animals, like there's this bird that he finds close to death. But then in the next breath, he's getting his gun out and off to shoot wood pigeon, which he reminds us his old farming ways. Now, I know I'm hardly country girl. I'm not claiming to be. I could be accused of not understanding the land and so on, absolutely, or tradition. But the only reason I didn't get it was because in one chapter he's speaking of the wood pigeon fondly, and then the next breath he's trying to shoot them out the sky. It was just kind of like, complete contradiction, and that's what made no sense to me, because if he was ranting throughout the book that they were pests or something, I would have some insight into this shift. That's the only thing that I just wasn't keen on. That was basically the only bit I didn't like. I could take the harsh aspects of nature that did arise in the book. I thoroughly loved visiting the meadow throughout the year. Throughout the book, I can appreciate this book isn't going to be for everyone, but I really loved it. It is a book that will stay with me. I've learned a lot from. I would give this book 3.5 out of 5, mainly just because of the shooting side of things, basically. But very much a worthwhile book, and yeah, it will definitely stay with me. Join me after the break to talk all about mirrors as portals. Welcome back. Recently, mirrors keep coming up in conversations that I've had. First off, one of our lovely Patreons stayed in a very old haunted house this summer, and the spirits were said to come in and out of one of the mirrors in the property. This got us on to talking about an episode of the programme Help My House is Haunted, where they talked all about mirrors being portals for ghosts and all manner of spirits. The other day, my daughter was plaiting her hair. She had one mirror set behind her, one in front, so she could see the back of her hair. And I was joking with her about, I'm sure that is not the best idea to have two mirrors reflecting back at each other, creating a portal. But I had no idea on much about this. So I thought, that's it. Let me go down that rabbit hole. That rabbit hole was huge, absolutely massive. So for this week's episode, we'll be looking at the folklore behind mirrors, especially linked to them being portals. We will also look at death customs of mirrors. For next week's episode, we are going to look at scrying. We will talk all about Bloody Mary, different hauntings related to mirrors. We will also be looking at John Dee and Nostradamus also. Throughout folklore, mythology, and popular culture, enchanted mirrors have been woven into tales where they have divined the future, revealed hidden secrets, or granted wishes. They have also been considered as magical gateways into other realms. The earliest reference to them as portals can be found in ancient Sumerian mythology, where the goddess Inanna in the Epic of Gilgamesh used a bronze mirror to gaze upon the underworld. In some versions of this tale, the mirror could be more of a metaphor of Inanna's ability to see into the hidden depths of reality rather than a physical object. Much of mirror folklore has ancient origins within Greek mythology, with reflections seen in water. Hades, god of the underworld, was said to have shown Persephone her reflection in a pool of water that led to her being trapped within his realm. Another tale is of Narcissus, who was fixated on his reflection within a pool of water and unable to leave. The story's ending is of him falling into the water, drowning, and turning into the flower of the same name. Essentially, the moral of both these stories indicate that anyone who gazes into their reflection will become trapped. Persephone's story is said to show that the mirror is a tool that can be used for good or evil, depending on the one using it. The importance of reflections and mirrors as symbols of death hark back to the ancient Greek and Roman times. Their version of the mirror were, of course, amidst pools of water or streams, which they used as means to divine the future until later on when they created small, heavy hand mirrors from copper or bronze. The Greeks believed that dreaming of your reflection was an omen that foretold death, and the superstition of breaking a mirror and it giving you 7 years of bad luck originates from the Roman belief that everyone has a 7-year soul cycle. A broken mirror to them would bring bad luck to the physical body and soul. Beliefs of mirrors being soul portals persisted through medieval times and into modern day. Ancient lore throughout many eras and cultures is that mirrors reflect the soul and should be avoided to prevent the soul from being lost. In a similar superstition to taking photos of a person, being able to capture their soul in the photo. Another old belief was of souls lingering in mirrors and that it was unlucky for a sick person to look at their reflection as it puts them at risk of dying. In many cultures, they would remove the mirror entirely from the room the sick person is residing in to prevent this. Covering mirrors is a death ritual passed down over centuries throughout many cultures across the world. It is said to stem from the 16th century with the belief that the reflection is an embodiment of the soul and that at death, the soul escapes the body, so it is vulnerable to being trapped within the mirror glass and taken away by the devil. Before a Victorian funeral, time stopped. Literally. Family members prepared the house for death by stopping clocks and covering windows. Of course, mirrors were covered. This was to prevent the deceased's spirit from being trapped. The Victorians believed that if you saw yourself in a mirror in a room where a person had recently passed away, you too would die shortly thereafter. Covering mirrors is a cornerstone of Jewish tradition following the death of someone. During the sitting Shiva, the week-long mourning period, in the Talmud, a Jewish religious text, the shad or soul can enter through reflective surfaces. Therefore, it is Jewish tradition to cover the mirrors and modern-day televisions also, as they are a reflective surface. I found many different reasons for this, such as encouraging inner stillness to meditate on the deceased, that you shouldn't adorn yourself during the period of mourning, but also that it is a sign all intimate relations in the home should halt. Instead of mirrors, the ancient Talmud texts mentioned beds. So according to the Babylonian Talmud, the text that covers law and tradition, the bed was the most important part of the home. The bed creates life, so when death happens, it must be overturned to show the end of life. For this reason, people began to reverse mirrors. Today, they cover them completely during the sitting Shiva. I just want to say I deeply respect all religions. I studied Judaism. I went out to Israel. I got to visit all the sacred places. It was amazing. So I have a real deep respect and love for this religion. So please, if I have butchered any of this research, it is not through being slapdash with it by any means. Just there were many different variances I came across. I am going to present a few pieces of research that I thought were fascinating, that kind of mirrored one another, no pun intended, but I appreciate there are many different takes on this. And I just want to say, same with any other religious references I've made in this episode also. I did find a Kabbalist response to the question of why the mirrors were covered for 7 days during mourning. This was particularly interesting from both a superstitious and psychological aspect. They write that all types of evil spirits and demons come to visit a family in mourning. When a soul leaves this world, it leaves a void, an emptiness that is prone to be filled by dark forces. This is because wherever there is a vacuum, negativity can creep in. And so the house of mourning, the place where the loss is felt the most, is a magnet for evil spirits. These demons cannot be seen by the naked eye, but when looking in a mirror, you may catch a glimpse of their reflection in the background. And so we cover the mirrors in a house of mourning because we don't want to be alarmed by seeing these demonic visitors. Before we dismiss this idea as mythical nonsense, let's try to understand it in terms we can relate to. Perhaps the idea of evil spirits can be interpreted on a psychological level. Evil spirits can be thought of as inner demons. The ghosts that visit a mourner are regret, guilt, and anger. When people who are grieving take a hard look at themselves in the mirror, they often feel that they didn't do enough for the departed, or that they didn't say all they wanted to say, or that there are some loose ends, some unfinished business. Even if this is not really the case, even if they were exemplary sons or daughters, parents or spouses or siblings, our minds tend to play tricks and we agonize over what could have been. These thoughts are the evil spirits that haunt the grieving, giving them no rest. So we cover the mirrors. We don't want to look at those dark figures lurking behind us in the mirror. At a time of such raw emotion, when the loss is fresh and the heart is volatile, there is no room for harsh self-judgment. If there are unresolved issues, there will be time to deal with them later. But in the week immediately following the loss, we focus on the loss itself. The grieving process takes us on a bumpy journey of many mixed emotions. Every emotion needs its time to be felt, but in the midst of that bumpy ride, we are not in a position to judge ourselves fairly. Taking a long, hard look at ourselves in the mirror is often a valuable exercise, but it has to be done when there are no ghosts lurking in the background. I think that is amazing. And to be honest, as a person of no religion, I really feel like that is a custom that, touch wood, that there are no bereavements I'm going to experience anytime soon. But I definitely understand from that perspective why that is a very worthwhile custom. Anyway, that is from the website www.chabad.org. I don't know why I needed to give you the www. You know how to use the internet. I'm sorry. Anyway, back to seriousness. Irish Catholic families are also said to have covered all mirrors in the house or turn the mirrors to face the wall following a death to hide the physical body from the soul. Some Irish superstitions say that if you look into a mirror long enough, you will see the devil looking over your shoulder. Some Russian folklore tells of the mirror being an invention of the devil due to their ability to draw the soul out of the body. Monks were said to place tiny mirrors on a small, slender stick, which they could slide up beside their nose to see spirits in their reflection using their peripheral vision. Okay, then. I came across an essay written by Julie Rogers. I will link it in the show notes. This absolutely fascinated me. I know you're thinking, Carly, I really don't want to hear you reading out an essay, but trust me, and I'm going to just cite a few points from this essay. This is in relation to the Mayans, or as she correctly uses the term, the Maya, how they used mirrors as portals to connect with the gods. So here we go. I know I geek out a bit, but I do think that this is quite interesting, and I hope that you do too. The Maya believed there were multiple worlds in addition to the human world. Portals connected these worlds and allowed active engagement between the Maya and their gods. Without portals and the ability to communicate between the worlds, the Maya belief system could not function. Evidence suggests the Maya believed reflective surfaces, mirrors, and water surfaces were portals to spiritual worlds. Mirrors functioned in service to ritual as an essential gateway between humans and the gods, and were two-way portals between earthly and spiritual worlds. I conclude that the gods are not omnipresent and that mirrors' portals are always active and strategically placed for the gods to have the best view of the world of humans. Cosmology and worldview were central to the culture of the ancient Maya. The Maya believed there were multiple worlds in addition to the human world, including an upper world, underworld, primordial sea, and Xibalba. To give some context, Xibalba is roughly translated as place of fright. It is the name of the underworld in Maya mythology, ruled by the Maya death gods and their helpers. So in 16th century, Verapaz, a historical region in the Spanish colonial captaincy general of Guatemala, the entrance to Xibalba was traditionally held to be a cave in the vicinity of Coban, Guatemala. Cave systems in nearby Belize have also been referred to as the entrance to Xibalba. In some Maya areas, the Milky Way is viewed as the road to Xibalba. So in this thesis, Julie Rogers examines how these mirrors were portrayed as portals in Mayan art, focusing primarily on the representation of mirrors in narrative scenes on painted ceramics. So these dark stone and mosaic mirrors would produce hazy or fractured reflections at best. Nevertheless, in the painted ceramic scenes, mirrors hold positions of prominence. The mirrors in these scenes are of a consistent, stylized form that indicates they carried iconographic meaning to the Maya, that the mirrors were understood to be portals between the earthly and spiritual worlds is a convincing argument for why mirrors are prominently featured. All luminescent surfaces are perceived as exceptional renderings of liminal space, seen as the threshold between the natural and spiritual realms. Additionally, the scenes consistently involve ritualistic behavior, rituals that would connect the performer with the gods via the agency of a mirror portal, a two-way portal through which the gods interacted with their creation and humans passed praise to their gods. The elite's ownership and control of mirrors as a means of communication with the gods would be a commanding source of religious and political power. Obsidian was used more in early post-classic period mirrors. Obsidian is a volcanic glass that was used for tools, including blades used for bloodletting. I knew it's about to get good. Volcanoes and mountains were considered sacred places. Obsidian blades are closely linked with spiritual rituals, sacrifice, bloodletting, feeding the gods. Obsidian is associated with the underworld and is a weapon of death. Death causes a journey through the underworld in the afterlife. The Maya practiced many forms of ritual, from bloodletting to smoking tobacco and possibly hallucinogenic drug use in rituals to open portals. The underlying purpose of those rituals was to achieve some form of communion with the gods, whether seeking the gods' favour affecting the natural world, such as ensuring a bountiful harvest, or simple scrying. Portals would be a way to that communion. Mirrors are not specifically mentioned in the mythology as portals to be used in this way. Ritual was essential to a mirror becoming understood as a portal. Without ritual, a mirror would remain a construction of rocks. Ritual, in essence, activates the mirror as a portal. To further what could be seen in a mirror, some rituals are meant to induce an altered state of consciousness. The ancient Maya used bloodletting, drugs, fasting, and other ritual acts to skew their reality by entering a trance or altered state of consciousness. There may have been sensory deprivation in caves. Like cave portal rituals, it is argued that the ancient Maya used psychoactive substances when performing communication rituals with mirrors. It is likely that the ancient Maya did not possess the stigma around substance use that we see today. It was probably viewed as a tool no different than making mosaic mirrors to induce pareidolia. However, substance use is difficult to prove from the archaeological record. We know they used alcoholic enemas as portrayed in art, and bloodletting is well documented, which may have induced hallucinations. There are mushrooms in the area that would be hallucinogenic. Anthropomorphic mushroom sculptures have been found at sites, but this isn't proof of their consumption. A mirror was found with a mushroom sculpture, and there are known instances of mushrooms being consumed in post-conquest rituals. In the end, just the possession of a mirror and the implication of its use could be enough to increase a person's power level, whether they used it to commune with the gods or not. Emulating the gods was a huge part of life, especially for the elite, who solidified their elite status by being as like the gods as possible. Bloodletting is one of the ways of communicating with other worlds. It does not appear to be tied directly to a physical portal like a mirror. Artistic portrayals of bloodletting often include smoke and vision serpents. Torb points out, so this is one of the references she cites. Again, you can look at the essay and see this. Torb points out that blood tastes like the sea and that water is the blood of the earth. Perhaps blood was also used in bowls, like water in a mirror bowl. If so, then blood is a reflective surface and therefore a portal. Bloodletting rituals, I get really excited when we get into the bloodletting. Bloodletting rituals lead to visions or communication with gods and dead ancestors. It could be that it was just low levels of blood that led to an altered state of mind and thus visions. Bloodletting and auto-sacrifice were meant to feed the gods human blood because the gods were owed a piece of humanity for their creation. The blood was collected in a bowl or on paper, which was then burnt. Smoke also fed the gods, and the smoke is where the visions appeared. This could also have been a result of pareidolia. There are obvious ties between death and blood. Death requires a journey to the afterlife and a trip through a portal. The paddler gods are deities who paddled a canoe that carried the dead through the afterlife. One paddler is an aged jaguar who is designated night, while the other, a stingray, is day. They could appear when the bloody paper was burnt in bloodletting rituals. Blood can be portrayed as a snake, tying them to vision serpents. Vision serpents also emerged from the smoke of the burning blood paper. Gods and spirits emerged from the mouths of snakes, tying blood portals to portals as mouths and caves. Blood is also associated with flowers, which is another form of portal. Caves are obvious portals, with the first people emerged from a cave of origin after their creation by the gods. This cave of origin is usually within a mountain, and we see this design recreated throughout the Maya world. As the cave of origin, caves brought life. Within real caves in the region have been found artifacts, including mirrors and bones, showing that these were sacred locations where rituals were performed. They may have practiced bloodletting and sensory deprivation to induce the altered state associated with rituals. In addition to bringing life, caves also brought breath, wind, clouds, rain, and lightning. And so, unsurprisingly, shaks are believed to have lived in caves. Shak is the name of the Maya god of rain, thunder, and lightning, and with his lightning axe, Shak strikes the clouds, causing them to produce thunder and rain. Shaks control rain from the 4 cardinal directions. In an account by Alan Christiansen, the Newell, the ancestral spirits, live inside a sacred cave in the center of a mountain. Spirits are like breath and wind from a cave. According to Torb, the Teotihuacanos associated round mirrors with roundish cave mouths, as well as other round things like eyes, shields, and flowers. It is likely that the Maya did as well. Round mirrors may have been meant to represent other round things. A round shape may not just represent cave openings, but the earth itself. Cenotes are basically both a cave and water, both of which are considered portals. Sometimes they are even located within caves. Cenotes, like caves, are a known location of ritual offerings and sacrifice, and all manner of artifacts have been found in them. For some sites, a cenote was the only source of life-giving water for the population, and like caves, shacks were thought to live there. People took pilgrimages to cenotes. Clemency Coggins suggested the sacred cenote was thought of as a great round mirror for divination. The majority of images in this study show humans engaged with mirrors on the worldly side of mirror portals, but there are several that have gods and otherworldly creatures in them. These then would be scenes from the other side of the portal, the spiritual world side. Humans would need to be more directly engaged with mirror portals than the gods, because gods did not necessarily need tools to communicate as much as humans did. Humans may have needed some help to overcome the blurred vision the gods gave them. Humans employed ritual for this purpose. The materials that were used in the manufacture of mirrors did not provide the kind of clear reflection that would make them ideal for vanity uses in the way that mirrors are used today. That point is further reinforced by the typical Maya mirror construction, in which the mirror is concave, convex, or mosaic. Any of these surfaces results in distorted reflections. Distortion creates the opportunity for broader interpretation of what the distorted reflections are or mean. Ritual behaviours like those portrayed on the ceramics have been documented by many Mayanists as having been practiced by the ancient Maya. These include smoking, dancing, applying makeup, and preparing for war. Within the majority of these scenes, the mirrors appear to have a function in relation to the ritual being performed. This clearly suggests a significant spiritual role for mirrors in Maya religious life, and the evidence collected and observed in this study is very much in line with the idea of mirrors as portals between the earthly and spiritual worlds. This provides an explanation for why the mirrors are featured. They link the performer of the ritual with the intended audience, the gods in the spiritual world. The performers are interacting with the gods through the agency of a mirror. The gods are typically not portrayed in these mirror scenes. The scenes are predominantly of the earthly performers of rituals. The presence of the mirror as intermediary between the humans and the gods would have given a significance far beyond that of just a dance or just smoking. The significance would have had to have been immediately understood by the Maya viewing these scenes. The Maya worldview is constructed upon a hierarchy of earthly and spiritual worlds. The connections between these worlds are portals. The Maya creation myths describe the gods' creation of humans as a way of fulfilling the gods' need for praise and nourishment. Portals provide a doorway through which praise can pass from humans to the gods, and ritual is the way that transfer is made. The caves were considered to be portals to the underworld, and it does have an obvious logic to it. If the underworld is beneath the earthly world, then a passageway underground would lead to the underworld. Why mirrors would be considered portals is less obvious. While it strikes the modern scientific mind as ridiculous, the evidence demands that we consider how ancient Maya ontology differed from our modern beliefs about the nature of reality. To us, the idea that a reflection is not simply a reflection and instead could be a passage to another world is a fantasy. To the ancient Maya, a mirror reflection would not be commonplace as it is to us. And yet, even to us, looking into a mirror and seeing ourselves and our world reflected back from a flat surface, yet with a sense of spatial depth, can be intriguing and a little strange. In that context, it is not difficult to imagine the Maya seeing a reflection and thinking they were seeing into a different world and even seeing a way into that other world. So although this is about minds, I'm just interjecting, this is me talking, you can understand, and I know like you get this, but you can understand why mirrors would have been so feared and, otherworldly. Anyway, back to the essay. For the ancient Maya elite, control over the ability to communicate with gods and spiritual beings would have supported their power and right to rule. This would endow mirrors with considerable power and further explain why they are included in these painted palace scenes. In this sense, the painted scenes could be seen as a form of propaganda, forwarding the idea that they had access to the gods and advertising that source of their power. To consolidate and control the power that came from communicating with the gods required keeping that ability out of reach of regular people. The peasantry, I'm sure I would have been included with those. No access to mirrors. This could be done through the restriction of knowledge and tools, in this case, mirrors. The fact that these painted scenes with mirrors are of palaces and high status figures doesn't necessarily indicate that only the elite had mirrors. However, there is no similar body of work portraying the lower classes that would provide that comparison. However, the archaeological records seem to indicate that mirrors were elite objects. Moving away from the Mayans, so some believe mirrors deflect any negative or malevolent spirits and intentions that have been sent your way. Others believe mirrors are portals, a thin spot for spirits to enter our world and return to the ether when they choose. Many investigators and psychics are convinced of this through their work. Portals are believed to be formed in liminal spaces, voids, and spaces in between. So, other examples of liminal spaces are twilight, which is between light and day. Midnight is the void between today and tomorrow. Mirrors are considered liminal spaces as they are voids between reality and reflection. Old mirrors were made from silver. We've looked at more ancient materials used, such as copper, obsidian. Some say that vampires do not have a reflection in a mirror due to being allergic to silver, so they would avoid mirrors at all costs, which made no sense to me because we've all seen a vampire film and the vampire is slap bang in front of the mirror and you can't see him. But what makes more sense to me in folklore is of the mirror being a reflection of the soul, of which the vampire is said to not possess. Hence, you cannot see his reflection in the mirror. We've cracked it. That is why. Some signs of your mirror possibly being a portal are said to be that you have uneasy feelings about taking it down, an unexplained willingness to move it to another location, strange feelings of attachment to the mirror, unexplained willingness to watch your reflection in it, creepy and uneasy feelings from said mirror, pets show a strange interest in the mirror, hauntings in the vicinity of the mirror, or cold or warm spots in the mirror's vicinity. So these are some other indicators that your mirror could be a portal. Take some with a pinch of salt. I'm not poo-pooing all of them, but these are some examples from paranormal investigators and psychics and so on. It is said that if you can place your finger on a mirror and if there is a space between the mirror and your finger, this can indicate a portal. If you see multiple reflections in a mirror, this is said to be a portal. Some psychics believe candles and mirrors can attract spirits and that a phenomenon of multiple reflections can be created by placing a lit candle in front of a mirror that can change the outcome and produce multiple reflections and potentially create a portal. If dowsing rods spin or point to the mirror, this is said to be connected to ley lines. Ley lines carry paranormal activity, and these magnetic lines cross the earth, and the energy running along these lines can feed into hauntings. So it is said that it could be that the mirror is placed close to one of these lines. Dowsing rods, especially those made from copper, are said to be good to use to check for anomalies. Should dowsing rods cross or spin in front of a mirror, it can indicate a higher risk of a portal haunting. If a pendulum is drawn towards the mirror, perhaps acts more erratically near it, this can be a strong indicator of a portal. Pendulums swing in a unique way and are programmed by their owner, so you'll no doubt be aware if it moves in a more unusual fashion, which could be the indicator of it being a portal. If a mirror has been used for any negative acts of magic or negative intent, it can open it up to being a portal off the back of that energy. Many reports have been made regarding antique mirrors and paranormal activity. Some legends say by sitting in front of a mirror in a darkened room with nothing more than a lit candle and gazing into a mirror will allow you to see spirits if they are present in your home. A more complicated version of the above is called the psychomantium or apparition booth. This is a darkened room with a series of mirrors set up in a specific way to allow the viewer to see and even communicate with spirits. So what is it about mirrors, specifically older mirrors, that seem so attractive to spirits? Well, most older mirrors have a silver metal coating back, and silver is a very interesting metal. Seems that silver atoms and their electrons are not densely packed. Electrons interact with light waves, which cause the electrons to move and thus cause the light waves to reflect. Interestingly, the electrons can match the speed of the visible and slower infrared frequencies and reflect them back. However, in the case of ultraviolet light frequencies, these are much too fast and pass through the mirror. Silver, which is used in a great deal of these mirrors, have the highest electrical and thermal conductivity of any metal on the periodic table and one of the greatest optical reflectivity available. It also has the lowest contact resistance of all metals. Light is an electromagnetic field, and silver is electrically conductive, which will cancel the field and cause the wave to reflect away from the mirror. I understood practically none of that. No shade on the gentleman that wrote this article. Science is not my strong part. This is from the website, the Searcher Group. I will link this in the show notes. I'm sure you've all done better than I did on this. But this part I did get behind. I did understand a little bit. I have theorized for many years now, this is the man on the website talking, not me. I theorized for many years now that spirits have an electromagnetic field in the higher ultraviolet range of frequency. If this is the case, the conductivity of a silverback mirror would be attractive as a doorway. And the fact that if these spirits operate at higher UV frequencies, they would not cancel out, but rather pass through the mirror with ease. Just a theory, way more experiments to go on this one. So now we're going to look at cleansing mirrors. This is from the website eclecticwitchcraft.com. I will put this in the show notes. So it said that if the mirror is brand new, you can easily clean it by simply putting it under running water from any tap. This is said to get rid of your everyday negative feelings that might attach to a mirror. If you need to cleanse a mirror of bad energy, here are some simple techniques. It might be that you are looking to cleanse an old mirror, cleanse a mirror after a breakup or a divorce. If you are simply interested in clearing the energetic attachments from an antique mirror, these methods are said to raise the mirror's vibrational energy, leaving it feeling fresh and renewed. This is the sea salt water and white vinegar method. So start by creating a cleansing solution using sea salt water and white vinegar. To do this, mix 1 tablespoon of sea salt in 1 cup of water. Use this sea salt water to gently wash the mirror, removing any physical dirt or grime. Afterward, wash over the mirror again with white vinegar, which serves as an effective glass cleaner that leaves no residue. This step is crucial in preparing the mirror for the spiritual cleansing that follows. I'm not just giving you Mrs. Hinch tips, I promise. So, smoke cleansing and blessing ritual. Once the mirror is physically clean, it is time to conduct a smoke cleansing ritual. They've suggested sage. Begin by lighting a bundle of dried, ethically harvested sage. Allow the sage smoke to cover and encompass the mirror completely. As the smoke flows over the surface, visualize any negative energies or attachments being released from the mirror. During this process, you might wish to recite a prayer or blessing, setting a clear intention for the cleansing. Ask that any stagnant energy, energetic attachments, or negativity be cleansed and released from the mirror, and that the mirror be infused with positive and vibrant light. Trust your intuition and allow yourself to be guided by your inner wisdom as you perform this ritual. Another way to magically cleanse your mirror is to harness the power of the full moon. Place the mirror in a spot where it can bathe in the moonlight, either outdoors or facing an open window. Leave it there overnight, allowing the moonlight to cleanse and recharge the mirror. The full moon's energy is potent for clearing away old energies and imbuing the mirror with renewed vitality. So you can effectively cleanse the mirror and restore its positive energy, whether it's an old mirror with a storied past or one that holds emotional significance. A spiritually cleansed mirror will reflect light and clarity into your life. So here is how to seal mirrors to prevent negative energy. There are many ways to seal mirrors, especially witchy mirrors, to prevent the accumulation of residual energies and bad energy. Many people practice ritual magic and protective magic to consecrate and empower their mirrors, guarding against negative associations. The methods used can vary depending on personal preferences, so planetary symbols, color correspondences, and intuition. So, here are some popular techniques for sealing mirrors. One common method of sealing mirrors involves the use of blessed salt water. Salt is considered a purifying agent, and water symbolizes cleansing, and together they create a potent mixture for purification and protection. To perform this ritual, dissolve a teaspoon of sea salt in a cup of good quality water. With your hand, sprinkle the salt water over the surface of the mirror while reciting an affirmation such as, "With this salt, I cleanse you of all negative energy." Afterward, gently wipe the mirror with a clean cloth and give it a final sprinkle of salt water. This method is effective in removing unwanted negative energies and consecrating the mirror. Another popular technique involves drawing pagan symbols. So you might want to use the pentacle on the mirror. So the pentacle is a five-pointed star enclosed in a circle and a really powerful protective symbol in many pagan traditions. So to perform this ritual, you can use a marker or your finger dipped in water or moon water. Draw the pentacle on the corners or center of the mirror, and if desired, on the back of the mirror as well. As you draw the symbol, recite a protective affirmation such as, "I am protected. No spirits can come through this mirror. This mirror is closed off to all spirits." This ritual reinforces the protective magic and can be repeated as often as needed. When it comes to sealing your mirror, trust your intuition. You might feel drawn to incorporate certain planetary symbols or color correspondences into your ritual. But overall, choose methods that resonate with you. But through these practices, you can ensure that your mirror remains a positive and energetically clean object in your space. If you are throwing away a mirror and worried about bad luck, some traditional practices believed to reverse it are to throw a pinch of salt over your left shoulder. The salt is thought to blind any negative entities that may be lurking on your left side. Another practice is to spin around counterclockwise 3 times to confuse any spirits. But a more rational one is to, in the space where the mirror was, light a candle, meditate for a few minutes to ward off any negative energy and also to bring positive energy into your space. That is all I have for you today, witches. I hope your brain doesn't hurt as much as mine. I know we went really deep down that rabbit hole, but I couldn't help myself. So, yes, I hope that this was of interest. I hope I didn't waffle on for too long on this episode. Next week will be much more witchy. We will get into all manner of different aspects of scrying. I'm really looking forward to that. So, it will be a very different take on the mirror. I'm going to watch some related horror movies tonight. I'm going to watch Oculus, which is all about mirrors, and also The Vigil, which is all about this guy who keeps vigil over a deceased member of like his former Orthodox Jewish community, and there's like this nasty spirit that follows him around. So yeah, I'm going to watch that tonight and absolutely creep myself out. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed doing this episode, like really enjoyed going down this rabbit hole. Can't wait to catch up with you all next week. Have a good one. I'm sending you lots and lots of witchy love.